Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a very special episode of the Whip Podcast. Again, my name's Zach, here with Elliot.
Thank you very much. Notice the t-shirt.
We got a very amazing guest today. Today we're sitting in Jacqui Scruby's office. Jacqui, thank you for coming on.
Hi everyone. No, it's awesome. It's awesome. Really pleased to have been invited. So
That's
thanks
okay.
for coming. And thanks for coming to me.
Honestly, thank you for just having us.
Yeah,
No,
to be honest.
that's fine. That's fine.
You may regret it at the end of this episode, but I'm sure.
Yeah, I know.
really
I probably
hope not.
will.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get along.
So, Jacqui, you're an environmental lawyer, climate advisor, former business owner, and now independent candidate for Pittwater. So,
That's
Jacqui,
right.
welcome to the Whip Podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to
And
be
also
here.
a mum, so.
And also a mum of two.
And you're making.
Oh, actually, let's say three.
Yes, three. Well, we've got the official dog of the podcast here. We were talking off air, but what's harder, being a politician or being a mum?
I'm going to say being a mum.
Being a mum?
Yeah.
What's more rewarding?
Being a mum.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct answer.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, so nice.
And look, that's why, a lot of the reasons I do what I do is because of this sense of, I suppose, giving back to the community and making a better future for my kids as well. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, and everyone's kids. So,
Yeah, no, it's good. So I guess first thing we should touch on is like your background, like from the area and how you got into politics, I guess.
Yeah, so I've lived basically I grew up in loads of houses all around the North Shore, and I've lived on the northern beaches, both up in Pittwater, also down in Freshwater, and Seaforth
awesome.
as well. So I've lived in lots of different places, and I've also lived overseas and in Melbourne. So, but I've got a long family history with Pittwater because my grandfather was one of the first principals at Pittwater High.
Oh, no way.
And my dad lives up here. My parents-in-law live up here. They've had a place since the 70s. So, yeah, love Pittwater and used to sort of sail on Pittwater as well when I was younger. So it's really nice for my kids to be doing that now as well.
Full Pittwater.
Full.
Sailing on the...
Yeah, but I'm more of a surf side, even though I'm not a very good surfer.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
my
terrible
hair's
as
still
well.
wet because I just went for a swim at Mona Vale. So,
Full local.
Yeah.
Full local.
Living the dream.
living the
literally.
dream. And then in terms of career, so yeah, you mentioned I studied medical science and law at UTS, and then
Okay.
Made us both feel terrible.
well, politics is open to anyone, so you don't need degrees.
Yeah,
So
Perfect,
we should
perfect.
run.
you should
Next
run.
time
Oh
we
my!
should run.
This can be the topic of the
This could be the
podcast
topic.
to let everyone know that anyone
We're
can
actually
run.
running and you're
Yeah,
interviewing
you're
us.
running.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should move aside.
Yeah.
But yeah, so studied medical science and law, ended up in law at a top law firm, actually did a secondment at a community legal centre called the Environment Defenders Office, and then moved into management consulting, but in that same environmental space. So basically advising ASX 200 companies and state and federal government on climate risk. So how climate, extreme weather events might impact their bottom line, basically, and also how to decarbonise. And I was with a group called Energetics for a few years, then left, had kids, did my own business in homewares, which was totally different, and then went back to that same organisation and continued doing the work, the climate risk work, and then met Dr. Sophie Scomps, our federal MP.
Yeah.
A few years ago, and she was doing a lot of work listening to the community. So basically going around having these kitchen table conversations where she got groups of people together and listened to what do you care about, what do you want to see in your politicians. Did this whole process. Then she was looking for an independent candidate for the seat of Mackellar, which includes everywhere from Palm Beach, down to DY, and then up to French's Forest and everything. And anyway, long story short, so we turned around and said, well, why don't you run? And she asked me to be her campaign manager, which I did. Then I went to Canberra with her for last year for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So I've been.
What's it like down there?
I love it. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's great because it's an incredible privilege to be part of, so close to making laws, reviewing legislation, being in that beautiful building. But it was actually incredibly inspiring to see the role that the independents were having at a federal level, moving amendments to legislation, making good policy better, driving their own agenda as well. And yeah, I was very much inspired, which is sort of one of the reasons I'm here today.
Yeah, well,
awesome.
Wow, that's amazing, actually, to be honest, to be down there and we've all been on year 6 camp, so...
Oh no, my daughter's doing that Well, when I was deciding whether I should run, one of her serious considerations was, you can't run, you need to be in Canberra next year. And I was like, why?
For the Year 6
She's
camp.
like, I'm going on camp and we need to like have all access and be able to come behind the scenes. And yeah, so she was disappointed that won't happen. But I looked up when her school excursion is, and it is in a sitting week, so Sophie will be down there. So I'm sure she'll sort of give them the royal treatment.
Yeah, give them. Well, you might. Yeah.
Like she does, I must say, for every Mackellar school. So we have a list of all the Mackellar schools coming down.
Oh, awesome.
And every time they come down, if it's a sitting week, Sophie will come out, chat to them, and, you know, give them, you know, a special insight into Canberra politics.
Wow, that's good. I mean, when we went, Parliament wasn't even sitting, so...
Oh, that's a bit boring.
Yeah, us as
Questacon,
well.
though. So
Questacon. Everyone loves Questacon.
The War Memorial as well. That
War Memorial was my favourite as well.
And the Mint.
Yes.
Well, we didn't go to the Mint.
Well, I had to pay $2 for a $1 coin, so...
Yeah, you got ripped.
I got ripped as. Good money-making technique, though.
Yeah.
Gotta respect it. Cutting into, like, the environmental stuff, were you doing, like, EPBs? Like BDAs and EPBCs,
Yeah, and also like in a top law firm as well, you tend to sort of work for developers. So that's where I think I had a bit of like an internal conflict, thinking, well, since a young age, because my grandfather, the one that was a principal at Pittwater High, he was the one that told me about climate change when I would have been probably this is like in the 80s, about 6 years old, before not before computers, but before a home computer, I suppose. Sorry, Scout. And before the internet. And so through even school, I've been doing a lot of environmental work and advocacy. And I think when I got to a sort of a top law firm and realised I don't necessarily want to be representing these clients in this way, even though I was doing some good environmental work. That's why I moved into management consultancy and sort of shifting focus more to sustainability and climate risk. And
Then what made you want to run in this election, and what brought you to politics?
So what brought me to... So I suppose in that work as a consultant, I was doing a lot of policy work. So often with state and federal government doing projects to advise them on what they should do policy-wise. And then when Sophie asked me to be involved, I got, you know, the taste of Canberra and what it was like to be, you know, at the table negotiating amendments and being really involved in the political process. And as I said, it was inspiring. And when Rob Stokes just, you know, announced his retirement, a couple of people in the community from Sophie's big volunteer base encouraged me to put my hand up to maybe run. And at first I was a bit reluctant, but I think I realised that a lot of the things that we all care about in Pittwater, yes, they're federal issues, but actually they're state issues. And state issues are where things get done.
Yeah.
So on like the big ticket items like climate and integrity, that's where a lot of implementation happens. But also, you know, I'm a mum here. Like I want the best for this area, and whether it's schools or roads and transport or, you know, protecting beautiful Pittwater from overdevelopment, they're all things that happen at a state level. So I suddenly realised actually, you know, it's important we have a voice at a state level, and I felt that my values reflect people in Pittwaters. So that led me to the decision to run.
So I guess we should break into the crux of the interview, which is, I guess...
That sounds scary.
Like
this,
This is a professional podcast.
Okay.
Supposedly. Don't watch our previous episodes. I guess, like, for a big issue for us being young, you know, top of the podcast heap, is housing affordability. Like, we have a lot of friends who are leaving the area because, you know, they want to start families and all that. So I guess how would you, you know, help with that situation? Because like we live in one of the most expensive suburbs.
We do,
as well.
and it is really hard because the other thing is it's a Liberal held seat for forever.
Yeah.
So people people are economically conservative. They tend to not want, you know, like loads of like affordable housing, and they don't want overdevelopment, and they, you know, there's a lot of that sort of I suppose conservative economic mindset. On the flip side, we know we need affordable housing, and we know we need to get clever about how we try and keep our young people here, because a couple of reasons. Firstly, you're right. Like, I know you're telling me anecdotally your friends move, but I've seen my friends move.
Yeah.
But the data shows that as well. So Pittwater, when you look at the different age brackets, you have pretty much the state average for all the ages, except when we get to 25 years old, which I guess is when people move out of home these days.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you see our 25 to 40 age bracket drop to half the state average.
Yeah.
And so I think that comes down, I'm going to pull out some statistics now that are my own and have no factual basis whatsoever. And they are, from just chatting to people, I think probably 70 to 80% is related to housing affordability.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe 20% is related to, I suppose like things to do, facilities and services. And if you're not a surfer, there's not necessarily all the indoor basketball courts and everything. That there are some, but we're over capacity in a lot of those recreational things. And I think also, and this comes to sort of what the Northern Beaches is known for, having that nightlife scene as well. So we're known for our bands. We've got Lime Cordiale playing tonight and this weekend. Yeah, who have endorsed me. Yeah. I know, because I did some advocacy work for the music industry at federal level. So know them through that and through Sophie's campaign. But I think as well, that's part of our heart and soul, is breeding great bands from the Northern Beaches, and we've kind of lost a lot of venues as well. So in terms of what the solution is, firstly, I don't think there's a silver bullet. So I think it's really hard, particularly when people up here, we also want to keep these beautiful houses in trees, not overdeveloped. So I'd say two things. So one is that Northern Beaches Council has got a housing strategy that is building out more houses, and particularly in areas that are already urbanised, like Brookvale, some places in the electorate of Wakehurst, like up near the hospital and so forth. And so I think, firstly, more supply in those areas will allow for, the dog. Can you grab the dog?
I'll go check.
Sorry, everyone. The dog's eating
Friendly
the dog is eating chicken, and the chicken's cooked, and so I think that's a risk for bones in throat. So.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's
so
right. We're an animal-friendly podcast.
We're an animal-friendly podcast. So I think, definitely a bit more supply, but to be honest, I think the Northern Beaches is always going to be quite expensive comparative to the rest of Sydney. And I think the other thing is making sure we have enough affordable housing and enough essential service housing, so people who are teachers, nurses, and we need more of all these professions, but incentivising people who are teachers, who are nurses, who are paramedics, who are giving to the community, that they have an in with some affordable housing as well, and have different availability to do that. So that will have two things. It will sort of allow more places for them to live affordably, because we've got a teacher shortage, up in, up the peninsula, schools are struggling to get teachers because they can't afford to live nearby as well.
Yeah, totally.
So having that type of housing, and then for me, and this is an answer that I don't have now, but it's where my head's at, which is because I come from a management consulting background, thinking, what are the innovative ways we can look at this? What's best practice from around the world, and how can we apply it here? Particularly as we don't want overdevelopment in this, beautiful area. And so one of those, in one of the Scandinavian countries, they have incentives where if you rent out part of your house or a granny flat or change to a duplex and have downstairs, even if you're renting that out and it's your primary residence, as the owner, you don't need to pay capital gains tax on that portion. So it provides incentives to open up a lot of properties we already have on the Northern Beaches. So we've got a lot of empty houses on the Northern Beaches.
Yes, more towards the upper peninsula.
More towards the upper peninsula.
Yeah, you would know all about that, wouldn't you?
A little bit.
Yeah. And we've got, there's also options for, granny flats and how we make those not rental properties, but actually longer term rental, not short term rental. Yeah. And also how we can incorporate clever design. So that might be more along the shop front, so not having high rises, but along the shops when they get redeveloped, making sure there's apartments on top. Yeah. And also allowing DA approvals for things like duplexes, which you've got the house on top, house underneath. So I think it's something also the community needs to be involved in the planning process and thinking about these issues, because the other thing we have to remember is we're on a peninsula and everyone hates the traffic, so we need to make sure we're just managing all these different components in a really sensible way.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Scout. Official dog on a podcast. Sorry, got it.
But also, I think it's something that needs working on, and I don't think the perfect solution is here now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a challenge I'm willing to take on.
Another thing, you were going to touch on as well, the PEP 11. The offshore, obviously, that's a massive. Just completely taking your question, sorry.
That's all right.
But
That's all right. You can do it.
We're
You
here now.
can do
We're
it.
here now.
Zach can do the next one.
I'll do the next one.
Teamwork makes the dream work, as you can say.
Yeah.
PEP 11 was something that came up to us a fair bit. I'm not completely across all of it, but it's an offshore development. How is that going to impact us here?
Okay. So it's not surprising not cross it because it is quite complicated how it's gone like to and fro. In a nutshell, it's exploring for oil and gas off our coastline.
Yeah.
If it progresses further and that they want to expand and keep going, the proponents, Asset Energy, then what it risks is, in a nutshell, risks a spill or a huge environmental disaster on our beaches. Now, anyone that's been to LA, to the beaches there, knows the water's murky. They have offshore oil and gas. The water's gross. They have oil spills. Like even greasy beaches, like underfoot. Do you know what I mean? Like it's something I think that unites the northern beaches. Just there's absolutely no way this can happen.
No way.
So last election, the federal election. So before the federal election, Zali Steggall put a bill into federal parliament saying stop PEP 11. And it didn't get passed. But she started to stir the pot on it. And then it became an election issue at the federal election. Scott Morrison came down, said, we're going to count it. It's all good. We all went, yay, that's awesome. But what's happened since then is he was doing it with one of those ministerial hats on that he wasn't meant to have. And so the decision, basically Asset Energy went to the federal court, said, no, he shouldn't have made that decision. We're going to overturn it. And then the government said, okay, we agree, he shouldn't have made the decision. So now it's effectively back on the table. It's gone back to the joint authority, which is federal and state. But in the meantime, what's happened is that at that time, Scott Morrison made that announcement. The New South Wales government also said, we're against it. And part of the decision of me to run was, I looked through a few things. So I looked through the voting record of councillors. I also looked through, have the New South Wales government done anything? They said they were against it. Have they passed any legislation? And they hadn't. So I worked with existing members of the New South Wales Parliament, Alex Greenwich, Justin Field, to create a piece of legislation that will pretty much disable PEP 11 because it won't allow the approval of any of the infrastructure to support it. So even though it's technically a federal issue and it's in federal waters mainly, this says that New South Wales won't approve any of the pipelines, any of the services, none of the infrastructure to support it. And so that's a huge thing for me, this election. And basically I want that bill passed, and that's going to be one of my big negotiating points if I'm, have the opportunity to negotiate for government. So that's a big one. Funnily enough, the Liberal government, after saying for ages you couldn't do anything at state level, 12 days after I announced that piece of legislation, came out with their own announcement of legislation, which I've considered, and it's not as good as mine. It's not as effective. Of course not. Well, basically it only deals with New South Wales waters, which PEP 11 is mainly in federal waters.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, it's a live issue. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like one of my main points that I want to get done.
Who is the Liberal guy around here?
So it was Rob Stokes, and now Rory Amon is running. He's a councillor.
Don't even know who he is, so he's not going to win.
Well, he is known, but I went through his voting record, and for me, there were just things in there that did not represent the values of Pittwater. So when council declared a climate emergency, he voted against that motion. When council condemned PEP 11, he voted against condemning PEP 11.
Really?
Yeah, there was just a list. Yeah. He's done a backtrack now, obviously, because he's running an election campaign.
Does he not know how to swim? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
maybe he can't swim.
Look, to be fair, and I did go and listen to why, because I was like, why would anyone? This doesn't even make sense. Even the most, But I think his point of view was, well, it's not council's jurisdiction to do these things, so I'll stay out of it. I completely disagree. If there's a motion in front of a councillor and you've got a right to have a voice for your community, you vote for that voice. Yeah. And even if you don't agree with it, you still stand up and vote, yes, I want to condemn it. And then you can still have your speech about why you think, maybe this isn't a council issue. So
totally.
Reading that voting record was one of the reasons I thought, no.
Yeah,
I'm a better representative of this community. And
a much better fit.
That's what I thought. But, it's for the voters to decide that, not me.
I'm quietly confident
Okay, well,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Well, yeah, maybe Rory moved to the area and he just doesn't get it.
No, he's been on the beaches his whole life.
Has he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
No. We'll do our own background
Anyway,
check
voters
on
can
that.
decide.
Yes,
Exactly.
okay.
We've all got websites. You can go and have a look.
Yes, you can.
Definitely.
But,
Well, we see everyone on the streets all the time.
Oh, look, we've
wearing
kept
all your
it so
shirts.
neat for the podcast.
Well, I have to confess. Now, I had piled on a few kilos over the years. I used to be a large.
I was going to
so
say, did you go for a medium?
Some of that, no. Compliment though. No, large had turned into an XL, which is a me problem, and I will fix it over time on the treadmill.
Yeah, or the beach.
But we have seen heaps of people in
Oh, that's
in
good.
these.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like being an independent, it's you community back, so you're not aligned to any party. I've never been a member of any party, and literally you've got this community behind you of people who want a voice, and instead of listening to your party, and you know, in my case with the candidate Rory, he would be a backbencher. He can still lobby and advocate in his party, but really in a party system, it's the cabinet that makes the decision, and then that decision gets pushed down. Whereas being community independent, I can always vote for my community, vote the way I think my community feels. And, you know, there's a lot of argument about how independents can actually have influence. And to that, I would say, even in federal parliament, there's a phone going. Don't know whose that even is.
It's fine. It's a busy office.
It's so busy at 6 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah.
So to that, I would say, look, even in federal parliament where there's no balance of power, the independents are having wonderful influence, amending legislation and driving their own agendas on behalf of their community. But in the current Parliament of New South Wales, it's already a minority government, and we've got two really good independents, Alex Greenwich and Greg Piper, and they really pass a lot of laws and also work with, you know, both sides of government to get reform happening. So I think independents actually play a huge role, and also it's going back to the way politics was envisaged when the Constitution was started, which is a member to represent that area. There was no talk of two-party system and two parties being established. So that's almost like a subsequent construct. And you kind of get the best of both worlds, because you get an independent to represent your community, but you still get a government. So there'll still be, you know, a major government governing. And independents have the role to keep that government accountable, to call out the BS, I don't know if I can say that.
Yeah, you definitely say that.
Yeah.
We've said much worse. It's fine.
And also to, pass laws, push for things,
Do you think that's why more people are turning towards the independents? Because for me personally, I just can't stand, Anthony Albanese seems like a nice guy. Am I going to listen to him? No. And stuff. Do you think people are just getting sick of the two-party system and just
I think
lies,
so. Yeah, I think
essentially,
there's
lies?
like you see with John Barilaro, I don't know if you've heard the recent tapes of
Jobs for mates.
and Jobs for Mates, and recent tapes of him talking about port barreling and spending loads of money where it's not needed, and then not giving money to victims of natural disasters based on where they live, whether they're in a Liberal seat or not. So I think people are definitely sick of that.
Yeah.
They're sick of a poor culture. He doesn't bark, he just snaps. And they're sick of the party shenanigans and factions, and mostly that they just don't get listened to. They vote someone in and then they're not really listened to, whereas this is sort of flipping it on its head and saying the community has a voice. And I suppose practically that means, more town halls, more out and about chatting to people, more accessibility, and also just in its most basic form, just not the type of person necessarily who might have traditionally been a politician. So, not someone who's joined the young party, young Labor or young Liberals, worked their way up, wears a suit and tie every day. I think that the people representing independents tend to be more just from the community, everyday people.
Yeah, for sure.
Hence why my hair's still wet from the beach.
That's all right. As you can see, I've got the campaign shirt on, so
the medium.
Thank you. That's what I'll tell people. So we have some, as you can tell, probably. Or did you have any more questions? Or
I had a quick one. What's been the hardest thing about campaigning?
I actually love it. So
You love it?
Probably this.
Yeah, talking to us.
No, I love it. I love talking to people. I love out and about and knowing everyone. And like campaigning in this electorate is beautiful. Like I've jumped on boats and gone to Scotland Island and the Western Foreshore. Then I've been on like the lake at Narrabeen. Then at the beach. Then at up at Eleanor's shops. And to be honest, Eleanor, I know I'm biased with Avalon, but Eleanor has to sort of be the next best amazing village with like the nicest people, and discovering the small businesses or the people in those areas has been awesome. I think the hardest part is doing that and also having a huge amount of computer work to do, and not wanting to sit in front of a computer, so your emails are still going nuts. You still have a lot of policy work to do, and trying to do it all plus be a mum. I suppose is the hardest part.
So we have some quick fire questions from our loyal listeners. We know you went around Europe. You had travelled. You spoke about that before. Now, our favourite question to ask people, we had a former rugby player who we interviewed. We like to ask, what was your least favourite country?
Oh, good, because I was going to ask you, if you said my favourite place, I was going to say I can't tell or everyone will go there. Because it's a bit secret.
Oh, it's a secret.
A bit secret. I'll tell you guys.
There was no more secrets in politics.
Except that one, except my favourite place in Europe. What was my least favourite? Look, I don't want to diss any country, really.
We do it all the time. It's fine.
Do you?
Adelaide and Melbourne cop all our hats.
Or where you had the worst experience?
Probably I was ready to leave Turkey because I'd been there like this isn't the most recent trip, but when I was like probably about 23 or something, 24, because it was just incredibly hot and you've got to cover up more and be more discreet in Turkey. So it's sort of wearing all the layers of clothing, incredibly hot. Got food poisoning, was just really ready to go, and actually got on a tiny boat and was exhausted, went to this tiny island in Greece, and that was then my favourite place. So it was the juxtaposition as well. Good. Yeah.
So I was just ticking all the boxes.
Yeah. So I've let a secret out that it's Greece. My favourite place is Greece and quite close to Turkey, but I'll leave it at that.
Perfect.
What is your favourite bar on the Northern Beaches, and why is it the Stain? Because that's the official bar of the podcast.
Oh, is it? Okay, well then it has to be the Stain, and because just good vibes.
Just great. Perfect. What's your second favourite then?
Look, I don't go out that much, but I would probably have to say, can it be the whole of the Northern Beaches? It should be in Pittwater. It should be in Pittwater.
It should be in Pittwater, yes.
It should be in Pittwater. Probably in Avalon, Elvina, because Bar Elvina. I know the owners. I used to in my uni days work at a bar, Cargo Bar, which is still around.
Oh, in the city. Yeah. I've never been allowed in there for some reason.
Oh, why?
I don't know.
I know. I used to be on the door, so maybe if it had been 20 years ago, you would have got in when I was on the door. But Andy, I used to work with at Cargo Bar, and now he owns Elvina, and I just think that's awesome, and it's a great bar, and they've got a little kitchen garden out the back, and Andy's great. So yeah.
Well, I think that's all we've got time for. We'll let you go. You got Lime Cordiale.
I'm going to Lime Cordiale tonight. And that's...
What's your favourite song?
Probably Robbery.
Okay.
Waking Up Easy, pretty good as well.
Yeah.
That's one of my favourites.
I saw them for the first time at a free concert when they played in Thredbo Village with about 200 people. So
it's so good.
Maybe they remember me.
Well, that's like I saw a small concert with Rufus, and then I went to a huge concert with Rufus a few months ago, and it wasn't the same. When you got the small
and intimate.
Yeah. So this election I think is important for music as well. So I'm supporting the vote music policy of the music industry, because I think especially Northern Beaches, all the bands coming out of here, it's really important to do that. And they've had a really rough trot through COVID as well.
For sure.
Yeah. And then I think other issues that people care about, like we were the last, one of the last suburbs in Sydney to have koalas. And, in Avalon, there are still the look out for koala road signs. And I think people remember that, like grandparents and everything remember when they were in the gardens, literally. And in New South Wales, we're facing mass destruction of koala habitat across New South Wales, and then also for housing developments in Campbelltown, they're literally trying to build a housing development on top of the only thriving koala population in Sydney. So I think, you know, I need to fight for the beaches and for Pittwater and all the things that are important here, like schools and keeping the Wakehurst Parkway open, stuff that should have been done years ago that hasn't been done.
Yeah, for sure.
But also I think people in Pittwater want a voice at that state level and want their voice heard on those kind of issues as well.
Do you need 2 security guards for election day?
I actually might.
Perfect.
If you do.
Where are you voting? Where are you going to be going down?
Oh, I haven't even thought where I'm actually going to be doing my vote. Do you know early voting starts tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
that there are 3 spots. There's Newport, there's Narrabeen, South Narrabeen Lifesaving Club, and then there's also Mona Vale in Bassett Street.
If you need 2 6'5"
Burly.
Navy SEAL burly security guards, you know who to text.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Easy, done.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I just think the final thing I wanted to end on was I don't know everything, and the whole point of a community-backed independent is to keep listening to people. The only way I can do that is if people talk to me.
Yeah.
And like come up when I'm in public, say hi. If I do an event like a town hall, you know, it's great that, you know, the 50 pluses come along, but I want to bring young people back into their democracy and be really approachable and talk. We didn't talk about mental health as well on the Northern Beaches, but
well, we can touch on that quickly if you would like to talk about it for a bit, as long as you don't have to go.
Yeah, no, I don't have to go.
Yeah.
But I think with the mental health aspect, there's this whole missing middle of services. So basically, if someone's too complex, so we've got Headspace in Brookvale, which is free service, but there's this missing middle of if you're too complex for Headspace, you can't get into a psychologist because of the wait times are really long, or, you know, it's too expensive. You're also you're complex, but you're not acute, so you can't present to hospital. You're not at that stage yet. There's kind of this whole missing middle that needs to be addressed. So I'm committed to working with Sophie Scompes, our federal MP, on addressing that gap. Both, you know, she's looking at around the country, I'm looking at, you know, around the state, but also on the Northern Beaches. And I think we can build out Mona Vale Hospital to have a few more services, particularly in regards to mental health.
Oh, awesome.
I love that. That's a big
Yeah.
thing. So
And
that's
also
good.
just like working out, there are so many different organisations, so just even being able to map out where our gaps are and work out which organisations do what for people and make it easier for people to understand, young people to understand where they can go and, you know, where they can get help is really important. But
No,
again,
definitely.
all these issues, I just need everyone telling me what they need as well. So
for sure.
I'm very approachable. Get in
Voice it.
touch.
Get
Yeah,
in
and follow me on socials.
Yes. Do you
That's
want
the
to shout out your
easiest.
socials?
It's at Jacqui Scruby Independent.
There we
So
go.
that's easy.
We'll be tagging you, don't you worry.
Yeah, and then follow the Whip podcast after.
Yeah, and follow the Whip
And you
podcast.
have my vote, so.
Yeah,
Great.
and mine as well.
Yeah.
Great.
And thank you for responding. Who else was? Oh, John. Oh, actually, I better not say names. But we had a few people reach out, never re-pick up the phone. So.
Oh,
from us,
really?
We want to say thank you.
No, it's really important. Like, I try and get back to everyone. If I miss anyone, it's literally because they've accidentally fallen through the gaps, not because I haven't tried.
We couldn't because we're top of the heap.
Yeah, I saw that straight
top
away.
of the heap.
But yeah, it's important. I think it's just important to try and get on and support everyone. And, you know, my campaign manager will probably kill me, who's always saying, you need to focus more, and, you know, but it's not. It's, for me, it's like actually reaching out and connecting with
For
everyone.
sure.
So
Yeah. And we have
less focus, more
we
spread.
have young people listening as well, so
Yeah.
this will be good for them. to
Great.
Hear it.
Great. Well, I'm not your typical politician, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
So
No, I think it
So,
is as well,
Well,
definitely.
vote one,
yeah.
and
It's neck to neck, so
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, that's nice, but she's never going to get in. It's literally 50-50
Yeah,
polling
for sure.
showing every
Well,
vote will count.
yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your
And
time.
number every box, everyone. If you don't vote for me, but you vote for someone else, but number every box, because you don't have to in the New South Wales elections. And what that actually means is, say you voted for like Greens or someone who doesn't end up in the top 2. So in this electorate, the Greens candidate and the Labor candidate may not end up in the top 2. So we'll use them as an example. If you then don't do you don't say anything else, you just go 1 Greens. What can happen is then your vote gets expired and goes in the bin effectively.
Yeah,
Whereas
okay.
if you do 1 Greens, 2 Jacqui Scruby, 3, Rory, 4 Labor, then if the Greens candidate gets knocked off, then that second choice you have will go on to that candidate's pile. So the key is number every box to get your vote maximum leverage.
Yes.
Evict.
I actually didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so good. I've taught you something.
Because that would have been me throwing the ballot into the bin, not
Yeah,
filling out
and
everything.
also
That does
no
sound like
donkey
a cunt.
votes or
No, none of that.
no donkey votes.
No
'cause-
18-year-old Elliot not knowing who to vote for and
yeah,
looking at the sex party and thinking it's a cool thing.
yeah. Well, I don't think they're running now, so yeah,
No,
you're gonna miss
It's-
out.
I mean, that's not shocking anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
But,
also like
yeah.
how you strategically put the Greens and Labor as people that might not fill in, because I think it's going to be between you and the other guys.
Yeah, and I would encourage people as well. Again, my campaign manager will kill me, but you know, if I'm not your first choice, and like say you want like Greens, Labor, or anything, put them one, put me two. It's
Yeah,
important
for
that
sure.
those parties get the recognition if you feel that their values truly align.
Yeah.
But yeah, just put me ahead of Rory.
Agree.
Agree.
Maybe we should.
But actually,
start
I'm going to say as well, don't just put me ahead of Rory. Go and look at his policies, you know, have a look on the internet and make an informed voting choice. That's the most important thing of all.
Well-
Is not who you vote for, but that you're in, you know, you've made an effort to just have a think about it.
Well, Rory isn't from the local area. We're starting a smear campaign.
Oh no, don't. He's already said that I've started a smear campaign.
Oh,
No,
no,
we're
what did he
definitely
say?
not doing
What
that.
is
Well,
that?
because one of my third-party campaigners, Climate 200, they endorsed me, which was great. They can't really give me anywhere near as money as they gave in the federal campaign.
Yeah, of
The
course.
maximum in New South Wales that they can give is $3,300.
Yeah.
But they can go and do brochures. So they did a brochure out in the post, which was in favour of me. It was actually, I did not like it. It was not a nice brochure around Rory, and I can see why Rory thinks it's a smear one, but I didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to call out his voting record because that's part of the integrity process.
Yeah, for sure.
And part of being an elected representative, you have to stand by your voting record. But I don't like a pylon, and this brochure was really mean. So, yeah.
No smear campaign.
No smear
no more
campaigns.
campaign.
But
Chuck it
we're
in the bin.
Just-
allowed to question that maybe he wasn't from the area.
No.
I'm just
He's
raising,
been on the Northern Beaches his whole life.
I'm just raising doubts.
So I've definitely not been in the area my whole life. Like I have
Yeah.
travelled Europe. I've lived in London.
Yeah, this is the WIP podcast. Maybe questioning Rory. Reach
Okay.
out.
All right. Well, it's all on you, not
Yeah,
me.
it's all on you.
It's
So
all
you're
on
in my
us.
T-shirt, and my volunteers are always happy and
I'm
healthy.
voting for. Yes, well, we are happy, but we're a question to the people. We're
Okay.
a voice to the people, top of the head. Well, thank you very much again.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for
Enjoy
having me.
tonight. Let your hair down. You deserve it. And
Even more than it already is.
yeah, and you have our vote. So
Okay, great.
that's
Thanks
good.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
See you later.
Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe.
Flex, check, flex, check, flex, check. Diamonds in my fangs, flex, check, flex, check, flex, check.